Hello and welcome to the Quiver channel. I'm Jason, your host. Let me tell you a little story about coding. I started coding in 1981. I remember it like it was yesterday. I really do. I was out with my dad, which was unusual. He usually took my sister with him. And my dad was fixing a car at someone's house, the upper end of Bentley. I've gone past that area on the Quingo a few times. And basically, I brought my computer, which was a ZX81, a Sinclair ZX81, the forerunner to this. Only had 1K of memory. You could get a add-on that took you up to 16K. It didn't really have a way to save stuff. Not that I had at the time. So I'm 11 years old. I'm just there with a friend who I only met 3 times. But basically, my dad was working on the car. We were inside. We had hooked up to a black and white TV. Doesn't need much more. We had a Sinclair magazine, I believe, or some kind of magazine, and it had a zombie game that you could type in. And yes, if you wanted to play games on the ZX81, you had to type the games in yourself. There was no loading. There was no flash drive. There was nothing to hold it. This was a very primitive, small computer. And so that's when I first got the coding bug, because this was the unusual thing. And the zombie game was just basically you were a little cube on a cursor on the screen, and there was other cursors trying to touch you. And if you got touched, you were dead. And you just had to move around using the cursor keys to survive. That was as simple as it got. And we typed in from the actual magazine or manual or something that we had back then and played it. Computer language have always been easy for me. I love them. I don't get human languages. I've never been able to learn French, never been able to learn German or Spanish, which all were offered in school. Back then, what they did, they gave you half a year of French, half a year of Spanish, and half a year of German. And if you decided you liked it, or the teacher thought you were good, then it became a permanent part of the actual lessons, and you did for the rest of your high school. But me, no. The only phrase I ever learned, ever in the entire thing, was one phrase. It was French, and it was je ne sais pas. And basically, from what I understand, that means I don't know. And I just thought that if I ever went to France, and that was the perfect way for me to tell people that I don't know. I don't speak the language. I don't know what you're saying. But give me a computer language. Give me access to any language. From 6800 Azeal, Fortran, COBOL, Pascal, any kind of computer language. Maybe it was my autism, my tech affinity, but my brain could just understand it. Give me half an hour with it. Not lessons. You don't need to teach me about it. Just show me the code and what it does for half an hour and let me read the code. And I will figure it out. Now, the first thing I tried to code that was actually a project, I think it was I was about 19 years old, so it would have been about 89. somewhere like that. And I'd done little projects. I had done menu systems. I had created databases and messed around with different things. But this was an actual project. I was part of a tabletop gaming group in the very early 90s and late 80s. And we played a game called Starfleet Battles. Now, Starfleet Battles was based on Star Trek. But it was a strategic game where you had a big systems map, and you each owned a number of systems that provided resources and that for you to build new ships and everything. But the magic of it was that when your fleets met with other people's fleets, you would battle it out on hex maps with damage allocation charts for your ships and everything. And you had these wonderful waxy pencils so you could mark in the damage to actually parts of your ships. You had to charge your plasma bolts, because I always played Gorns. Other people played the Klingons and, of course, the Federation and so on. But we played once or twice a week, and there was an awesome person there who would make lead figurines. Basically, if you had a ship, he would create the mold for the ship, whether it was a Gorn ship or a Klingon ship, it doesn't matter. He would create the actual miniatures about this size that you could put on the hex map and we play with. But we got to the point, because each of us owned a piece of space, and it was getting to the point where it was hard to tell who's had what in this big map. Because you had the big map, which was the sector, the Alpha Sector. I don't know, remember much of it, but basically you had to have someone who was willing to work out all the math. It was like a freaking spreadsheet simulator sometimes. So I decided, okay, I'll write a program to deal with it. A lot of my projects start. So I don't know what engine I used or what language I used, but the idea was I created this coordinates map that was like how many parsecs or whatever size, and it had everybody's space in it, and then it would keep an eye on, depending on how much space you got, how much economy points, how many points to build ships, to build fleets, to buy equipment you had. It worked out all that. So every time we met, you could press a button and it would just say, Klingons have got this, Federation have got this, what do you want to spend it on? Do you want to spend EP, or do you want to spend it on a new fleet of ships? And so it was going really well. And I created a random generation system, because there was anomalies, just like in the actual TV series of Star Trek. There was things like the Doomsday Machine, with things like space amoebas and monsters in space that would randomly, or even wandering black holes and rogue planets. And the code kept an eye about where randomly these would wander between 1 week and the next, and whose space they were damaging, or you had to do something about it, and where everybody's fleets were. So that was my first proper coding project. I remember the first time I built the random number generation system, I didn't understand how computers deal with random numbers, and it looked really bad, because when we first ran it, all of the nastiest monsters in the game were avoiding my space completely. I hadn't cheated. I hadn't done it on purpose. There was just a glitch in the actual random coordinates generation, which decided where it would move next. And so So I reworked that and got it working in the end, but that was amusing. But I've done lots of things with computer code. But it came into being because of necessity, usually. Okay, so I met Paolo in 1998. And we were playing a game, a MUD, which is a text-based precursor to MMOs. Game was called Afterlife, I believe. Now, me and Paolo were very good at role play and very good at putting a lot of work into a game. We became very powerful. We had a clan and everything on Afterlife. Her character's name, I believe, was Adamantium. Mine was Pyros. The problem was that there was a lot of people who were jealous of us. Whereas we did everything in game. Everything we gained was through hard work, through grinding, through getting it resources and equipment and creating political alliances and all these kind of things, all in game. Other people were sleeping with the immortals, and doing things out gamer, and they did not like us. And I had like my character was a slut. Oh god, my character was a slut. Texting and cybering and all that is not new. And I was, and that made certain people jealous. I was basically like a male slut who went around and slept with so many people on that MUD, and which was amusing as hell to both me and Paola. But Paola got ill. She went into hospital. We didn't know what it was. At the time, of course, we found out later it was cancer. But couldn't log into the game for a couple of weeks, except for leaving a message saying Paola's ill, where she's in a hospital, send us out your prayers, just a normal kind of thing you do. But I didn't keep an eye on the politics situation. And so this was my first experience about how nasty people can be. When Paola came back from the treatment, and she was on the preventative medication that would try to keep the cancer away. Wasn't curable, but they could try to keep it away. We found that most of our friends had disappeared. Most of the connections we had made on the game had distanced themselves from us, and questions were being asked by the immortals. What we found out was some people who were very jealous. Two ringleaders. One was a girl who wanted me to leave Paola, date her, which I wouldn't do. Didn't mind having in-game relationships, but I would not do anything against Paola or anything. And Paola knew of all my relationships anyway. So this person didn't realize how bad she was, because I had spurned her because she said when Paola got ill, the very weekend we found out it was cancer, this girl sent me an email and saying, your wife's going to die, why don't you date me instead? Yeah. Yeah, that. But so while I was away at hospital, because remember, I stayed at hospital during the day looking after Paola there, keeping her company. Then I would go straight to the library in Hanley, and I would read up the medical texts on acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and try to send bloody pen pal messages to the authors of these books and see if they had any ideas of how to treat Paula's illness. And then I would basically go home, take out, I had a cavalry saber from World War II, I believe, or World War One. And I would go into the backyard and I would destroy our old furniture, destroy it, rip it apart, cut it apart, just so I could exhaust myself by around midnight and sleep until about 6 and then go to the hospital. Well, that was my routine. I did not have time to be on the game to defend us. So when we came back, all these people had disappeared, and not only that, horrible rumours had been started by this girl and also a guy who was jealous of me and wanted power. And so we were the admins on the mud, because the rumours were saying that Paula isn't ill, you're lying about Paula, and that Paula doesn't exist, that it's just one person playing both accounts. Now, the thing is, we were on the same IP address because we lived at home. We had 2 separate computers, but we went through the same internet and that, and I think we used a Wingate server or something like that. And so by the time we got back, there was so much nastiness, and people had believed these horrible lies that Paula wasn't ill, that if Paula did exist, she wasn't ill, and she was just saying this to get sympathy. And I was saying that my wife had cancer to get sympathy from us. Seriously, back then, did not have to do that. So one day, Paula was still not up to logging into the game. She knew what was going on, though. I'd shared all the email, and I just decided I can do better. So I grabbed the source code for I think it was a ROM 2.4 mod, I'm not sure, and a DQ mod source. And I spent 2 weeks learning the language, tearing them apart, and I started to build my own mod called Edge of Midnight, an adult mod. The newest version of it is still running now in my cupboard over there. Version 5. I coded up to version 3. I did all the coding up to version 3. The rest I didn't. Actually, number 3, I had someone helping with me as well. It was a massive project by then. So back then, we were countries first. When you think about it, did so many things like that. For example, there was something called BT Home Highway, which was meant to be used by businesses. See, this was back when we had 56k modems. That was the best. But BT Home Highway had 2 ISDN lines, and each ISDN line was 64k, 64k up, 64k down. So it was much better than the normal 56k because that only had a small amount of up. And so it paired 2 of those lines and created a 128k channel. Now, I remember ringing up. You couldn't ring up as a normal home user. You had to ring up as a business. They were very confused when I tried to pay for it because they expected invoices and things and what's your tax number and all this kind of thing. And of course, I didn't have that because I was just a home user. So we ordered it. We had it. It was the people were like, "What are you going to need? You're a home user. You'll never need 128k download and upstream and that." Still remember the white box with the two blue little slots for two little lines, the two little lines that went into it. So I had that, and I built a server. A picture of the server, the original server, and it ran Mandrake. Now, Mandrake, back in the 90s, if you wanted Linux, yes, you could. You could get it, but you bought it. So Mandrake was this big blue box, great big blue box meant for business. And it came with a manual that was that thick. And it was on like 4 or 5 CDs or something silly like that. So that was my first experience of Linux. And so Mandrake back then. And so I can show you a picture of the actual. Let me just find this. Let me. Put this in the right place. Put it on here. Yeah. Okay. Let me grab it. You're about to see a piece of ancient history here. Just need to add a source, which will be an image. So let's find it. Desktop. Okay. I've got to. Pick the wrong thing. Okay, there we are. Come on. No, there's an easier way to do this. Right. This is our old place. Now, what you're seeing there is on the right, no, on the left is my gaming PC. And on the, which is the gaming PC is on the top shelf, right at the right. The monitor it's connected to is the one on the left. The server that you can just see underneath next to the printer. Oh, I love that printer. Those bloody laser printers would last forever. Wonderful things. And so that was the server that we ran it on. Went through lots of iterations of different kinds of systems, even got rack servers and so on. The funny thing is, actually, this looks like a. Let's zoom it in a little over here. Look at that. Oh my God, yeah, let's just try zoom it in even more. See if I can. Right. Oh, look at that. For anybody that knows, that mouse there, the Microsoft IntelliMouse, was one of the best mice ever built by anyone. Anyone who ever got to use one of those mice would kill to have one. Not a modern iteration, not a freaking rebooted one, but an actual one that still worked because they were tanks. They worked brilliantly. They felt so nice in the hand. But what I wanted to zoom in here on, what's this here? It looks like it's a, I think this is a, that is, let me just zoom in even more. Yeah. That is a computer magazine from back then. Can't tell anything about, might have been PC something or the PC World or something, I don't know. Times, and there's a laptop over there, it looks like. Desktop next to it. I get distracted. Okay, let's remove that. So, I created this game. I built it over time, and it still works over there. Like I said, it's in the cupboard in my server cupboard over there. Version 5 is. So I've been coding my entire life, and as people know, I am coding now. I'm creating a synthetic life form. I am creating an adaptive system. It's pretty amazing. But one thing I want to point out, I do use Claude. I do use large language models to help me code. Some of the stuff I'm coding, like the neural net stuff, is very, very complicated. And having a system that can simulate code in that, this is very different than vibe coding. Vibe coding to me has bad connotations. Vibe coding is when you code, but you have no experience in coding. When you create software, but you've got no ability to know how to optimize. You see, stuff like Claude, even the latest one, it only does what you tell it to. It isn't its fault if you make the mistake, if you don't optimize the code, if you don't ask the questions, if you don't build security into the foundation. That's on you, not the system. So I still code myself a lot. A lot of what I'm doing the actual typing in. I mean, oh God. I've realized that coding is one of the greatest coping strategies for my autism and my PTSD and all the issues I face. It is like the ultimate level of cognitive rewrite for me to actually sit and code for a day. Got to make sure that I don't burn out on it though. But this is why up here I've got a computer set up next to here. That is part of the situated system. Downstairs I've got my main office in the kitchen, where I sit from about 6 a.m. in the morning till about 5 p.m. at night. I don't do that. This is a passion project, and it's doing really well. But I have to make sure that the computer downstairs doesn't have Discord, doesn't have any YouTube, doesn't have my browser logged into anything, because I can be distracted too easily. So I just go down there, do that, and I leave all my other stuff up here. I'm really enjoying it. So I'm not against using AI to help you code. I'm not above using AI to help teach you how to code. After all, you've got to remember, I only started coding in Python like about a month ago. So using AI to help and as an ally, as a tool to help me code what I want, been very good. But the only reason the project is really good is because I've got the foundational knowledge to do it. Anyway, take care of yourselves. This has been a long video, but it felt like doing a little vlog. So bye-bye for now.